Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today, we're not going to talk about myths, viral fun facts, or sensational stories designed to shock. We're going to talk about real medieval life, not the romantic version, not the fantasy version, and not the caricature version, but the actual lived reality of people who existed inside a completely different worldview. The Middle Ages were not dark because people were ignorant. They were dark because life was fragile, because death was constant, because medicine was uncertain, because faith replaced science, because survival shaped every belief, every custom, and every system of thinking. People didn't live in absurdity. They lived in a world without antibiotics, without electricity, without modern hygiene, without modern medicine, without modern law, and without modern safety. This was a world where disease was invisible, where God explained the unexplainable, where the body was mysterious, where death was familiar, and where fear was not entertainment. It was daily reality. So today, we're going to look at 10 real, documented realities of medieval life. Some fascinating, some disturbing, some terrifying, but all historically grounded in real sources, real practices, and real records. Not to judge them, not to mock them, but to understand how people survived in a world that constantly reminded them how fragile life truly was. First, death was not rare, it was normal. In medieval Europe, death was not a distant concept. It was not hidden, it was not sanitized, it was not separated from daily life. People died at home, children died frequently, women died in childbirth, men died in wars, infections, accidents, and labor. Disease moved faster than medicine could follow. According to historical demographic studies, in many regions of medieval Europe, up to 30 to 40% of children did not survive to adulthood. Average life expectancy was often 30 to 40 years, not because people couldn't live longer, but because infant mortality and disease lowered the average drastically. Death wasn't exceptional. It was expected. That's why medieval culture developed an entire philosophy around death. Memento mori, remember you must die ars moriendi. The art of dying well, constant religious meditation on mortality, visual symbolism of skulls, bones, decay, and judgment. Church art, manuscripts, sermons, and literature constantly reminded people, life is temporary. The soul is eternal. Fear of death wasn't hidden. It was integrated into identity, faith, and daily thought. And this is only the beginning. If you enjoy thoughtful history, stay with this channel and subscribe. Second, disease was invisible and therefore terrifying. One of the most frightening aspects of medieval life was that people did not know what caused illness. There were no germ theories, no bacteria discovery, no viruses, no microscopes, no understanding of infection. Disease appeared randomly, spread invisibly, and killed unpredictably. Plagues were seen as divine punishment, moral corruption, spiritual contamination, God's judgment, cosmic imbalance, not biological transmission. During events like the Black Death, 1347 to 1351, which killed an estimated 30 to 60% of Europe's population, people had no scientific explanation for what was happening. They blamed sinful behavior, impure souls, foreigners, animals, poisoned wells, divine wrath, demons, witches, corrupted air, miasma theory. Entire communities collapsed psychologically, not just physically. Fear wasn't just of dying. It was fear of not knowing why people were dying. That uncertainty created mass hysteria, religious extremism, scapegoating, and social violence. 3. Medicine was dangerous. Even when it was trying to help, medieval medicine was based on ancient theories, not experiments. The dominant system was the humoral theory, developed by Hippocrates and Galen. Blood phlegm, yellow bile. Black bile health meant balance. Illness meant imbalance. So treatments focused on restoring balance, not curing disease. This led to real practices such as bloodletting, leech therapy, purging, vomiting, sweating, fasting, herbal mixtures, mineral remedies, animal-based remedies. Bloodletting, in particular, was extremely common. It was used for fever, infection, mental illness, depression, pain, inflammation, plague symptoms, weakness, anxiety. Not because people were cruel, but because it fit their medical logic. They genuinely believed removing blood removed illness. But in reality, it often weakened patients, caused shock, worsened infections, led to death. Medicine was not always healing. Sometimes it accelerated dying. 4. Childbirth was one of the greatest threats to women. Pregnancy in medieval times was extremely dangerous. There were no antibiotics, no antiseptics, no sterile instruments, no cesarean safety, no blood transfusions, no understanding of infection. Historical records show 1 to 2% maternal mortality per birth, meaning women faced real risk every single pregnancy. Infections like puerperal fever were common and deadly. Childbirth was so dangerous that special prayers existed for pregnant women. Saints were invoked for safe delivery. Childbirth rooms were treated as sacred spaces. Death in childbirth was seen as a holy death. Women lived with the constant knowledge that giving life could take their own. 5. Violence was structurally normalized. Violence in medieval society was not exceptional. It was systemic. It existed in justice systems, punishment, warfare, law enforcement, social hierarchy, family structures. Public punishments included executions, mutilations, amputations, branding, flogging, public humiliation, stocks, pillories. These weren't hidden. They were public rituals. Punishment was meant to deter crime, display authority, reinforce social order, demonstrate power. Violence wasn't entertainment, it was governance. 6. Religion was not comfort, it was fear and hope combined. Medieval Christianity was not just about love and peace. It was deeply focused on hell, judgment, punishment, damnation, sin, suffering, purification. Heaven and hell were not metaphors. They were real destinations in people's minds. Fear of eternal punishment shaped behavior more than law. Salvation wasn't abstract. It was survival of the soul. 7. The body was mysterious and sacred. The human body was not understood scientifically. It was seen spiritually. Blood, bones, organs, relics, and remains were sacred. This is why relic worship existed. Saint bones were preserved, skulls were displayed, ossuaries were created, corpses were ritualized, burial practices were symbolic. The body was not biological material. It was a vessel of the soul. 8. Law was not justice, it was authority. Medieval law systems were not based on equality. They were based on status, class, rank, gender, power, lineage, divine authority. Truth was not proven, it was declared. Confessions were extracted, trials were performative, evidence was symbolic. Justice was ritual, not investigation. 9. Fear was a survival mechanism. Fear wasn't pathology, it was adaptation. Fear taught obedience, caution, faith, humility, conformity, social order. It was a tool of survival. 10. Life was fragile but meaningful. Despite all this, people loved people, married, people laughed, people created art, people wrote poetry, people built cathedrals, people sang, people celebrated, People hoped medieval life was not only suffering, but suffering shaped meaning. The Middle Ages were not an era of stupidity. They were an era of vulnerability. Not ignorance, but limitation. Not madness, but survival logic. Not absurdity, but adaptation. They lived in a world where death was close, God explained chaos, fear created order, belief replaced science, ritual replaced medicine, faith replaced certainty. And in that world, people did what humans always do. They tried to survive. They tried to make sense of suffering. They tried to protect their families. They tried to understand the unknown. They tried to give meaning to fear. They tried to find hope in uncertainty. Not monsters, not fools, not primitives, just humans, living in a world far more dangerous than ours. Thank you for watching. If you value history told carefully and accurately, consider staying with this channel and subscribing. The past deserves precision as much as curiosity.